everyone.
Hi, we're over in the Opera House now. Apparently we were over at the Sniders, even though we're at the Sniders.
We're at the Sniders, but we were on the wrong Facebook page, and our apologies. So as all of you who are waiting, I hope you stuck around or can come find us here.
And everybody who was over there, come on over. So, hey, we were giving a little background about our time here in Rosebud. We've been here 14 years, and our connections to the pieces that we want to offer today. We were talking about A Wind in the Willows, or actually The Wind in the Willows. I always get that wrong, by Kenneth Grahame. Jeany, do you want to say again about directing it for all our new people? Look, they're all here.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to direct an adaptation of A Wind in the Willows called Toad of Toad Hall for Rosebud School of the Arts a number of years ago. That was adapted by Rebecca Wolgemuth. And I was reading to the boys at night and like for bedtime. And I was impressed with how articulate Kenneth Grahame was, as well as what a challenge it is to convey this as a storyteller, to get through the phrasing and the long sentences and to have it be so meaningful with all of his exquisite exposition, as well as these adorable characters. And so when it came time to say, like, what could we share from Rosebud Theatre? This is not something we've done before that we can like just pull out of the hat. It's like, this is a bit of an actor workout and an offering of something that is actually cuts right to the heart of staying home and valuing a home as well as adventuring. So I think that resounds. That must be why it's still been haunting me.
Yeah.
What's your connection, Dave?
Well, there's a couple of things. I wanted to say that one of the things that's been happening here for me is to actually reacquaint myself in some ways with my home. You know, there's artwork on the walls that we put up there because, you know, they were gifts to us or things that we purchased, things that mean a lot to us. But realizing that you come to take them for granted, don't even see them anymore. So anyway, there's another connection that we'll see here in the story. But my other big experience that helped me fall in love with the world of this story was Rosebud Theatre's production of The Wind in the Willows that had featured music by John Rutter. Was just a delight, and I had the opportunity to play Toad. And
Hello?
We've had the arrival of an unexpected guest. Yes, I played Toad, and Toad is, you know, such a larger-than-life character, isn't he?
Egotistical, boastful,
yes,
proud. Toady.
Toad, now that you're here, maybe you better just
I see you there behind
come over
us.
for a minute. This is the story part we're going to read is not really featuring you, Toad, today.
No,
it's
not in the
Mole
chapter at
and
all.
Rat.
This is chapter 5.
Yeah. Toad, are you
let
gonna
us
come over?
Can you listen kindly?
I guess not. Yeah, if you could just be a good listener. We're glad you're here, Toad. It's very important that you're here. All right. There you go.
Maybe we'll see you later.
Maybe. All right, I think we better get into this. We have for you a reading from chapter 5 of The Wind in the Willows, and we'll have some music for you after that. But yeah, let's get right into this. Oh yeah, and thank you to the costumes from the production of The Wind in the Willows. We get a little extra help for our characters.
Weston, can you turn off the... Oh, did you turn off the heat? Got it, okay. And some music, please.
Music. Introductory music.
The sheep ran, huddling together against the hurdles, blowing out thin nostrils and stamping with delicate forefeet, their heads thrown back and a light steam rising from the crowded sheep pen into the frosty air. As the two animals hastened by in high spirits, with much chatter and laughter, they were returning across country after a long day's outing with Otter, hunting and exploring on the wide uplands where certain streams, tributary to their own river, had their first small beginnings, and the shades of the short winter day were closing in on them, and they had still some distance to go.
Plodding at random across the plough, they had heard the sheep and had made for them, and now leading from the sheep pen they found a beaten track that made walking a lighter business, and responded moreover to that small inquiring something which all animals carry inside them, saying unmistakably, "Yes, quite right, this leads home."
"It looks as if we're coming to a village," said the mole somewhat dubiously, slackening his pace, as the track, that had in time become a path, and then had developed into a lane, now handed them over to the charge of a well-metalled road. The animals did not hold with villages, and their own highways, thickly frequented as they were, took an independent course, regardless of church, post office, or public house.
"Oh, never mind," said the rat. "At this season of the year they're all safe indoors by this time, sitting round the fire, men, women, and children, dogs and cats and all. We shall slip through all right without any bother or unpleasantness, and we can have a look at them through their windows if you like and see what they're doing."
The rapid nightfall of mid-December had quite beset the little village as they approached it on soft feet over a first thin fall of powdery snow. Little was visible but squares of dusky orange-red on either side of the street, where the firelight or lamplight of each cottage overflowed through the casements into the dark world without. Most of the low latticed windows were innocent of blinds, and to the lookers in from outside, the inmates gathered round the tea-table, absorbed in handiwork, or talking with laughter and gesture, had each that happy grace which is the last thing the skilled actor shall capture, the natural grace, which goes with perfect unconsciousness of observation. Moving at will from one theater to another, the two spectators, so far from home themselves, had something of wistfulness in their eyes as they watched a cat being stroked, a sleepy child picked up and huddled off to bed, or a tired man stretch and knock out the end of his pipe on a smoldering log.
But it was from one little window, with its blind drawn down, a mere blank transparency on the night, that the sense of home and the little curtained world within walls, the larger stressful world of outside nature shut out and forgotten, most pulsated. Close against the white appurtenance, close against the white blind, hung a birdcage, clearly silhouetted, every wire, perch, and appurtenance distinct and recognizable, even to yesterday's dull-edged lump of sugar. On the middle perch the fluffy occupant, head tucked well into feathers, seemed so near to them as to be easily stroked, had they tried. Even the delicate tips of his plumped-out plumage penciled plainly on the illuminated screen. As they looked, the sleepy little fellow stirred uneasily, woke, shook himself, and raised his head. They could see the gape of his tiny beak as he yawned in a bored sort of way, looked round, and then settled his head into his back again, while the fluff-ruffled feathers gradually subsided into perfect stillness. Then a gust of bitter wind took them in the back of the neck. A small sting of frozen sleet on the skin woke them as from a dream, and they knew their toes to be cold and their legs tired and their own home distant a world away.
Once beyond the village, where the cottages ceased abruptly, on either side of the road they could smell through the darkness the friendly fields again. And they braced themselves for the last long stretch, the home stretch, the stretch that we know is bound to end sometime in the rattle of the door latch, the sudden firelight, and the sight of familiar things greeting us as long-absent travelers from far oversea. They plodded along steadily and silently, each of them thinking his own thoughts. The moles ran a good deal on supper, as it was pitch dark, and it was all a strange country for him as far as he knew, and he was following obediently in the wake of the rat, leaving the guidance entirely to him.
As for the rat, he was walking a little way ahead as his habit was, his shoulders humped, his eyes fixed on the straight gray road in front of him. So he did not notice poor Mole when suddenly the summons reached him and took him like an electric shock. We others, who have long lost the more subtle of the physical senses, have not even proper terms to express an animal's intercommunications with his surroundings, living or otherwise, and have only the word smell, for instance, to include the whole range of delicate thrills which murmur in the nose of the animal night and day, summoning, warning, inciting, repelling. It was one of these mysterious fairy calls from out of the void that suddenly reached Mole in the darkness, making him tingle through and through with its familiar appeal, even while yet he could not clearly remember what it was. He stopped dead in his tracks, his nose searching hither and thither in its efforts to recapture the fine filament, the telegraphic current that had so strongly moved him. A moment, and he caught it again, and with it this time came recollection in fullest flood.
Home! That was what they meant. Those caressing appeals, those soft touches wafted through the air, those invisible little hands pulling and tugging all one way. Why, it must be quite close to him. At that moment, his old home that he had hurriedly forsaken and never sought again, that day when he first found the river. And now it was sending out his scouts and its messengers to capture him and bring him in. Since his escape on that bright morning, he had hardly given it a thought. So absorbed had he been in his new life, in all its pleasures, its surprises, its fresh and captivating experiences. Now, with a rush of old memories, how clearly it stood up before him in the darkness. Shabby, indeed, and small, and poorly furnished, and yet his. The home he had made for himself. The home he had been so happy to get back to after his day's work. And the home had been happy with him, too, evidently, and was missing him, and wanted him back, and was telling him so through his nose, sorrowfully, reproachfully, but with no bitterness or anger, only with plaintive reminder that it was there, and wanted him. The call was clear, the summons was plain. He must obey it instantly and go. "Ratty!" he called, full of joyful excitement. "Hold on! Come back! I want you! Quick!"
"Oh, come along, Mole, do!" replied the rat cheerfully, still plodding along.
"Please stop, Ratty!" pleaded the poor Mole in anguish of heart. "You don't understand. It's my home, my old home. I've just come across the smell of it, and it's close by here, really quite close, and I must go to it. I must! Oh, come back, Ratty, please, come back."
The rat was by this time very far ahead, too far to hear clearly what the Mole was calling, too far to catch the sharp note of painful appeal in his voice. And he was much taken up with the weather, for he, too, could smell something suspiciously like approaching snow. "Mole, we mustn't stop now, really," he called back. "We'll come for it tomorrow, whatever it is you found. But I daren't stop now. It's late and the snow's coming on again, and I'm not sure of the way. And I want your nose, Mole. So come on quick, there's a good fellow." And the rat pressed forward on his way without waiting for an answer.
Poor Mole stood alone in the road, his heart torn asunder, and a big sob gathering somewhere low down inside him, to leap up to the surface presently, he knew, in passionate escape. But even under such a test as this, his loyalty to his friend stood firm. Never for a moment did he dream of abandoning him. Meanwhile, the wafts from his old home pleaded, whispered, conjured, and finally claimed him imperiously. He dared not tarry longer within their magic circle. With a wrench that tore his very heartstrings, he set his face down the road and followed submissively in the track of the rat, while faint, thin smells, still dogging his retreating nose, reproached him for his new friendship and his callous forgetfulness. With an effort, he caught up to the unsuspecting rat,
who began chattering cheerfully about what they would do when they got back, and how jolly a fire of logs in the parlor would be, and what a supper he meant to eat, never noticing his companion's silence and distressful state of mind. At last, however, when they had gone some considerable way further, and were passing some tree stumps at the edge of a copse that bordered the road, he stopped and said kindly, "Look here, Mole, old chap, you seem dead tired. No talk left in you, and your feet dragging like lead? We'll sit down here for a minute and rest. The snow has held off so far, and the best part of our journey is over."
The mole subsided forlornly on a tree stump and tried to control himself, for he felt it surely coming. The sob he had fought with so long refused to be beaten. Up and up it forced its way to the air, and then another, and others, thick and fast, till poor Mole at last gave up the struggle and cried freely and helplessly and openly. Now that he knew it was all over, and he had lost what he could hardly be said to have found.
The rat, astonished and dismayed at the violence of Mole's paroxysm of grief, did not dare speak for a while. At last he said very quietly and sympathetically, "What is it, old fellow? Whatever can be the matter? Tell us your trouble, and let us see what I can do."
Poor Mole found it difficult to get any words out between the upheavals of his chest, that followed one upon another so quickly, and held back speech, and choked it as it came.
"I know it's a shabby, dingy little place,"
he sobbed forth at last, brokenly.
"Not like your cozy quarters or Toad's beautiful hall or Badger's great house. But it was my own little home, and I was fond of it. And I went away and forgot all about it. And then I smelt it suddenly on the road when I called, and you wouldn't listen, Rat. And everything came back to me with a rush, and I wanted it. Oh, dear, oh, dear. And when you wouldn't turn back, Ratty, and I had to leave it, though I was smelling it all the time, I thought my heart would break. We might just have gone and had one look at it, Ratty. Only one look. It was close by. But you wouldn't turn back, Ratty. You wouldn't turn back. Oh, dear. Oh, dear."
Recollection brought fresh waves of sorrow, and sobs again took full charge of him, preventing further speech. The rat stared straight in front of him, saying nothing, only patting Mole gently on the shoulder. After a time he muttered gloomily, "I see it all now. What a pig I have been. A pig. That's me, just a pig, a plain pig." He waited till Mole's sobs became gradually less stormy and more rhythmical. He waited till at last sniffs were frequent and sobs only intermittent. Then he rose from his seat, and remarking carelessly, "Well, now we'd really better be getting on, old chap," set off up the road again, over the toilsome way they had come.
"Wherever are you going to, Ratty?"
cried the fearful Mole, looking up in alarm.
"We're going to find that home of yours, old fellow," replied the rat pleasantly, "so you had better come along, for it will take some finding, and we shall want your nose."
"Oh, come back, Ratty, do,"
cried the Mole, getting up and hurrying after him.
"It's no good, I tell you. It's too late and too dark, and the place is too far off, and the snow's coming, and I never meant to let you know I was feeling that way about it. It was all an accident and a mistake, and think of Riverbank and your supper."
"Hang Riverbank, and supper too," said the rat heartily. "I tell you I'm going to find this place now if I stay out all night. So cheer up, old chap, and take my arm, and very soon we'll be back there again."
Still snuffling, pleading, and reluctant, Mole suffered himself to be dragged back along the road by his imperious companion, who by a flow of cheerful talk and anecdote endeavored to beguile his spirits back and make the weary way seem shorter.
When at last it seemed to the rat that they must be nearing that part of the road where the mole had been held up, he said,
"No more talking. Business. Use your nose and give your mind to it."
They moved on in silence for some little way, when suddenly the rat was conscious through his arm that was linked to Mole's of a faint sort of electric thrill that was passing down that animal's body. Instantly he disengaged himself, fell back a pace, and waited all attention.
The signals were coming through. Mole stood a moment rigid, while his uplifted nose, quivering slightly, felt the air. Then a short, quick run forward, a fault, a check, a try back, and then a slow, steady, confident advance.
The rat, much excited, kept close to his heels as the mole, with something of the air of a sleepwalker, crossed a dry ditch, scrambled through a hedge, and nosed his way over a field open and trackless and bare in the faint starlight. Suddenly, without giving warning, he dived. But the rat was on the alert and promptly followed him down the tunnel to which his unerring nose had faithfully led him.
It was close and airless, and the earthy smell was strong.
And it seemed a long time to Rat ere the passage ended and he could stand erect and stretch and shake himself.
The mole struck a match. A match.
And by its light the rat saw that they were standing in an open space, neatly swept and sanded underfoot, and directly facing them was Mole's little front door with
Mole End painted in Gothic lettering over the bell pull at the side. Mole reached down a lantern from a nail on the wall and lit it.
And the rat, looking round him, saw that they were in a sort of forecourt. A garden seat stood on one side of the door, and on the other a roller. For the mole, who was a tidy animal when at home, could not stand having his ground kicked up by other animals into little runs that ended in earth heaps.
On the walls hung wire baskets with ferns in them, alternating with brackets carrying plaster statuary, Garibaldi and the infant Samuel and Queen Victoria and other heroes of modern Italy.
Down on one side of the forecourt ran a skittle alley with benches along it and little wooden tables marked with rings that hinted at beer mugs.
In the middle was a small round pond containing goldfish and surrounded by a cockle shell border,
topped by a large silvered glass ball that reflected everything all wrong and had a very pleasing effect.
Mole's face beamed at the sight of all these objects so dear to him, and he hurried Rat through the door, lit a lamp in the hall, and took one glance round his old home. He saw the dust lying thick on everything, saw the cheerless, deserted look of the long-neglected house, and its narrow, meager dimensions, its worn and shabby contents, and collapsed again on a hall chair, his nose to his paws.
"Oh, Ratty,"
he cried dismally,
"why ever did I do it? Why did I bring you to this poor, cold little place on a night like this, when you might have been at Riverbank by this time, toasting your toes before a blazing fire, with all your own nice things about you?"
The rat paid no heed to his doleful self-reproaches. He was running here and there, opening doors, inspecting rooms and cupboards, and lighting lamps and candles and sticking them up everywhere.
"What a capital little house this is!" he called out cheerily. "So compact, so well planned, everything here and everything in its place. We'll make a jolly night of it. The first thing we want is a good fire. I'll see to that. I always know where to find things. So this is the parlor! Splendid! Your own idea, those little sleeping bunks in the wall? Capito! Now, I'll fetch the wood and the coals, and you get the duster, Mole. You'll find one in the drawer of the kitchen table, and try and smarten things up a bit. Bustle about, old chap."
Encouraged by his inspiriting companion, the mole roused himself and dusted and polished with energy and heartiness,
while the rat, running to and fro with armfuls of fuel, soon had a cheerful blaze roaring up the chimney. He hailed the mole to come and warm himself.
But Mole promptly had another fit of the blues, dropping down on a couch in dark despair and burying his face in his duster.
Rat, he moaned. How about your supper? You poor, cold, hungry, weary animal. I've nothing to give you. Nothing. Not a crumb.
What a fellow you are for giving in, said the rat reproachfully. Why, I only just now saw a sardine opener on the kitchen dresser quite distinctly, and everybody knows that means there are sardines about somewhere in the neighborhood. Rouse yourself, pull yourself together, and come with me and forage.
They went and foraged accordingly, hunting through every cupboard and turning out every drawer. The result was not so very depressing after all, though of course it might have been better. A tin of sardines, a box of captain's biscuits, nearly full, and a German sausage encased in silver paper.
There's a banquet for you, observed the rat as he arranged the table. I know some animals who would give their ears to be sitting down to a supper with us tonight.
No bread.
Groaned the mole dolorously.
No butter.
No pâté de foie gras, no champagne,
continued the rat, grinning.
And that reminds me, what's that little door at the end of the passage? Your cellar, of course. Every luxury in this house. Just you wait a minute.
He made for the cellar door and presently reappeared, somewhat dusty, with a bottle of beer in each paw and another under each arm. Oh, Toady, thank you.
Thank you, Toad.
We'll take the wine.
Yes. Thanks for contributing to the piece. Well done.
Yes,
well
yes.
done.
You can listen if you
Yeah,
like.
there's more to listen to. Here we go. You self-indulgent beggar you seem to be, Mole. Deny yourself nothing. This is really the jolliest little place I ever was in. Now, wherever did you pick up those prints? Make the place look so home-like they do. No wonder you're so fond of it, Mole. Tell us all about it, and how you came to make it what it is.
Then, while the rat busied himself fetching plates and knives and forks and mustard, which he mixed in an egg cup, the mole, his bosom still heaving with the stress of his recent emotion, related, somewhat shyly at first, but with more freedom as he warmed to his subject, how this was planned, and how that was thought out, and how this was got through a windfall from an ant, and that was a wonderful find and a bargain, and this other thing was bought out of laborious savings and a certain amount of going without. His spirits finally restored, he must needs go and caress his possessions, and take a lamp, and show off their points to his visitor, and expatiate on them, quite forgetful of the supper they both so much needed.
Rat, who was desperately hungry but strove to conceal it, nodding seriously, examining with a puckered brow, and saying, "Wonderful, and most remarkable," at intervals, when the chance for an observation was given him. At last the rat succeeded in decoying him to the table, and had just got seriously to work with the sardine opener when sounds were heard from the forecourt without. Sounds like the scuffling of small feet in the gravel, and a confused murmur of tiny voices while broken sentences reached them.
Now, all in a line. Hold up the lantern a bit, Tommy. Clear your throats first. No coughing after I say 1, 2, 3. Oh, where's Bill? Here, come on, do. We're all awaiting.
"What's up?" inquired the rat, pausing in his labors.
"I think it must be the field mice," replied the mole with a touch of pride in his manner. "They go round carol singing regularly at this time of year. They're quite an institution in these parts, and they never pass me over. They come to Mole End last of all, and I used to give them hot drinks, and supper too sometimes when I could afford it. It would be like old times to hear them again."
"Let's have a look at them," cried the rat, jumping up and running to the door. It was a pretty sight, and a seasonable one that met their eyes, when they flung the door open. In the forecourt, lit by little rays of light in the horn lantern, some 8 or 10 little field mice stood in a semicircle, red worsted comforters round their throats, and forepaws deep in their pockets, their feet juggling for warmth.
Didn't know you were going to do that. There we go. There's another picture of it. Sorry, we dropped the ball.
Go.
Where are we?
With bright, beady eyes.
With bright, beady eyes, they glanced shyly at each other, sniggering a little. Let me see them again. Put them up there. Sniggering a little, sniffling, and applying coat sleeves a good deal. As the door opened, one of the elder ones that carried the lantern was just saying,
"Now then, 1, 2, 3.
And forthwith their shrill little voices uprose on the air, singing one of the old-time carols that their forefathers composed in the fields that were fallow and held by frost, or when snow-bound in chimney corners, and handed down to be sung in the miry street to lamplit windows at Yule-time. Oh my goodness, that's as far as we'll go today in Chapter 5. There is more beautiful story. I'll give you another picture. Oh, Mole does end up in his bed.
Yes. And Chapter 5 here is called Dolce Domum, Latin for home, sweet home.
And there's one more of Rat getting the beer out of the cellar. Where's that picture? Oh, that's the front one. Here we go.
There it is.
Sorry.
Aren't those great? Those illustrations are by a man called Robert Ingpen. I should have thought he'd be called Inkpen, but he was Robert Ingpen. It's a glorious illustrated edition of the book that we cherish.
See those bunk beds built into the wall?
The innovations of dear Mole. Oh, Mole.
Thank you for joining us on this journey.
Thanks for listening. We've got a couple other little bits to add to you. Another piece that is actually really connected to bedtime with our boys, we got from the production of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe that Rosebud Theatre did, well, a number of years ago now, as time does fly. And a gorgeous little melody to the prophecy of Aslan's coming. So we will sing that for you now.
Wrong will be right when Aslan comes in sight. At the sound of his roar, sorrow will be no more. When he bares his teeth, winter meets its death, and we shall have spring again. When he shakes his mane, spring again. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see it.
Long live the king, it says. Our dear friend Leonard Randall gave us that.
And that's Aslan's head. Sorry if that wasn't easy to see. Great. Well, I think that's about it. Oh, Toady! Hello! You're back. Hi, buddy.
Toad, you've done so well.
You were very patient.
Yes, we know it's quite difficult for you to let others, well, tell their story when you have so many important things to say, don't you?
Do you? Do you have something you want to say, Toady?
Why, I certainly do. And it seems only fitting that as we put a cap on this wonderful offering, that I should have my time. Now, do 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 do. I got style, I got chic, I got charisma, I got mystique. I'm the Toad, I'm the greatest.
Genius is really the word. a knighthood should be conferred on the sensational, successful, scintillating superstar Toad. Yes, thank you very much. Yes, wonderful to see you again. Thank you ever so much. Yes, goodbye.
Thank you, Toad. Yes, I know a lot of the book is about your adventures, but thank you for letting us go on this journey with Ratty and Mole, parts that aren't often shared.
That's right.
We're
We're thinking about home. All right, and we want to make sure and let you know that next week on the home stretch tour, what is it called? It's a very snazzy name. The Homestage tour, home stretch. We were on CBC Home Stretch yesterday. Woo, that was exciting. All right, so the Homestage tour here for Rosebud Theatre continues next week on Thursday, because Friday is apparently a holiday. And get this, everybody, a special visit from Keith Hamm and Julie Hereish playing gorgeous classical music in celebration of Easter Holy Week. Yeah. So if you've ever experienced the Rosebud Chamber Music Festival that Keith is the artistic director for, and his now wonderful and sublimely talented wife, Julie Hereish, and a little someone who's along with them, yes, new life coming for the Hamm family, will be with us next Thursday. So I think the time is to be determined. Most of these are happening at noon, but the other cool thing about this is, of course, this Facebook Live will stay on Facebook for a while. So if you didn't get a chance to watch it live, come on back. See it later. Otherwise, thank you again to Rosebud Theatre and to all of you for joining us for a little bit of home.
Yeah, thank you. Rosebud Theatre's intention is to continue to give to our audience, our beloved patrons, and everyone who is dear to us during this time. And thank you for your patience and your understanding as we find new ways to communicate, to give to you, and to learn ourselves through story. God bless you.
All the best.
So, in life.